Welcome back to Capitol Tonight. 9 years ago, 2-year-old Kyra Franchetti was shot to death by her father during an unsupervised court-ordered visit in Virginia. The case was originally taking place in Long Island, New York. What makes this tragedy especially horrifying is that it wasn't unexpected. Kyra's mother had repeatedly begged the court to protect Kyra from her father's suicidal threats, abuse, rage, and coercive control. A bill named for Kyra, sponsored by Senator James Skoufis and Assemblyman Andrew Hevesy, would require courts to evaluate safety risks before granting visitation rights. Importantly, the bill does not alter the best interests of the child legal standard. It will require that facts already in evidence be considered before a parent is allowed unsupervised visits. Joining us with more is Kyra's mom, Kyra Franchetti. Welcome to Capitol Tonight. It's good to have you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you for having me here today.
So according to a column by two advocates for this law published in the Albany Times-Union, prior to Kyra's death, you pleaded with the court to intervene, warning of your husband's escalating behavior of stalking, of threats of self-harm, explosive violence. Those warnings were ignored, however. What did the court say to you? What was their reasoning for not intervening?
You know, you and I, women are told to leave abusive relationships, but we're not told what happens once we leave an abusive relationship and we have a child with our abuser. And when I walked into Nassau County Family Court, because like you mentioned, I'm from Long Island, and I came forward and I told the judge that I was terrified for my life, for Kyra's life, for her safety, that we were being stalked, that we were being threatened. And instead of protecting Kyra, the judge involved in Kyra's case told me repeatedly to grow up from coming forward. And she actually said at our last hearing, this is not a life or death situation. Well, the judge was wrong. And because of that, Kyra will never grow up. And what happened to Kyra has happened to far too many other children. This is not an isolated incident. Kyra is one of 38 New York children to be murdered in recent years alone. And we have a systemic problem with New York Family Court that must be addressed through legislation, common sense changes like Kyra's law, to make sure that we are prioritizing the safety of the child in what are life or death situations in child custody.
I have to ask, Jacqueline, did you ever hear back from that judge after Kyra was shot dead?
She has never apologized. She's never spoken to me. And unfortunately, she has been promoted from Nassau County Family Court to Nassau County Supreme Court. And I have heard from other parents who are going through custody cases in her courtroom that things have not changed. And this is why we need Kyra's law.
So let's talk about how the law would work. This has been around for a while, and there are some who want to stand in the way of the law for a variety of reasons. But first, tell us how it would work.
So Kyra's law, when you look at this, will do 3 absolute critical things to protect a child in a custody case from an abusive parent. So first of all, it will require the courts to have a safety assessment, to look at common lethality factors to quickly protect a child when needed. The second thing that Kyra's law will do is it will require judge training. Judges are not properly skilled, nor are they properly trained when assessing what are life and death situations in these cases. And the third thing that Kyra's law will do is it will stop common practices that easily allow abusers to secure custody or visitation of the child, like what happened in Kyra's case, and unfortunately far too many others.
What happened there? What exactly did your ex-husband do in order to ensure that unsupervised visits were something that he could get?
Unfortunately, because there's no safety assessment that currently happens right now, the judges continue to order unsupervised access. And you know, this isn't just in Kyra's case, this is happening in far too many cases. And this needs to change. We need to look at some of the common lethality factors and stop abusers from easily getting access and visitation of the child.
So
And
as I mentioned before, this has been in the works for 9 years, right? Kyra died 9 years ago.
she did, but we didn't introduce Kyra's Law until about 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay, thank you for correcting me. Unfortunately, in some custody proceedings, and this is why the bill has not been passed so far, in some custody proceedings, it's common for one party to accuse another of abuse when it's convenient, though not necessarily true. So how would the bill protect against that kind of misuse of the judicial system?
And this is exactly why we need Kyra's Law. So the first thing you need to have is a safety assessment. Look, there are some common lethality factors that are well documented, well researched that we need to look at. Is there violence? Is there threats of violence? Is the violence escalating? Is there stalking? All of the things, by the way, that I've just mentioned were present in Kyra's case and in far too many other cases. And we need to look at these things. We also need to have judges who are properly trained and skilled to assess these things. Now, look, in Kyra's case, yelling at the victim or the survivor to grow up or telling me that this is not a life or death situation when I'm terrified for my child is never the way that we should be assessing these situations. And we can change that with Kyra's Law.
Another roadblock to passage of Kyra's Law is what some lawmakers describe as the cost of the bill, specifically the costs of experts who are doing these kinds of analyses and the state facilities used for supervised visitation. How do you respond to that concern?
Well, first of all, there isn't a cost measure in Kyra's Law. We've been actually very cautious about that when we look at this. And one of the things that Kyra's Law will do is make sure that our courts run more efficiently, because if we are able to do a safety assessment, we're able to identify when a child can be at risk of harm and quickly protect them. What's happening right now in courts is that we keep bringing people back for hearing after hearing or case after case, and there's no ability to stop and protect a child, which Kyra's Law will stop and allow to happen. And that's going to allow things to happen so much smoother and allow us to protect a child.
What are you hearing about the chances of passage this year? We've been hearing about a lot of bills that could be sort of snuck under the finish line. Not about this one, though.
Well, I'm hopeful that the Speaker and the Majority Leader will prioritize and pass Kyra's Law this year. This is a bill that is desperately needed to protect children from abusers in custody cases. We have systemic failures in our family court system that are leading to children being abused and murdered at staggering rates. And we have the solution here in Kyra's Law to make this happen. Look, every day the school bus goes by my house and my daughter's not on it. And 38 other children are also gone because of this system.
It is a heartbreaking story. We've been talking about Kyra Franchetti with her mom, Jacqueline Franchetti. She's founders of Kyra's Champions, and her daughter was shot to death by her father during an unsupervised court visit about 9 years ago. Jacqueline, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you for having me. And I really hope that we get Kyra's Law passed and become law this year. Children in New York desperately need this bill.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Let Spectrum News be your resource for balanced, in-depth political coverage. And click the subscribe button here. You can also download our app and watch us on TV to learn more about the candidates, where they stand on the issues, and more. We'll see you then.